I'm sitting here with a friend, Mark Silver, and I want to talk to him a little bit. Mark, tell me how you got going in this business we're in.
Well, it's kind of interesting. My family hadn't done anything with guns for a long time, so I didn't learn it. Unfortunately, wasn't able to learn it from close family members. But when I was in 8th grade, I had a substitute junior high teacher, and we were in a English and history class, and instead he got off talking about Civil War shooting. He was a Civil War skirmisher, member of the North-South Skirmish Association, and he started talking about that, and that kind of took up most of 2 hours, and it was the most fascinating thing I ever ran into, and I have been absolutely hooked on all kinds of black powder guns and firearms in general.
Sure.
And it just really caught my imagination. I think it's that kind of contact a lot of times that really makes a difference in people's perception of what all this is all about. But I started out in Civil War reenacting or shooting Civil War muskets with the North-South Skirmish Association, and then eventually got interested in round ball.
Okay. When did you make your first black powder gun?
Well, I did some modifications on some replica Civil War muskets I had, kind of eased into it. But I started out building model airplanes when I was a kid, so I enjoyed crafts and working with my hands and stuff like that. But probably the first real piece I did was after I got out of a 4-year hitch in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
And I had done a little bit of reading about some of the kits and stuff that were available.
Sure.
And when I got out of the Navy and had a chance to go to some local gun shows around the Detroit area and talk to a few people like Homer Dangler and Larry Marock, who were kind enough to talk with me and make some suggestions on that, I went around bought a bunch of parts and built a flintlock pistol, kind of an early style flintlock pistol. And they said, well, heck, you can cut a barrel to the kind of outside dimensions that you want. You can just file it and stuff like that. But I didn't realize how much work that actually was. So the first barrel I did, for this pistol was 9 inches long, and they didn't have any octagon to round barrels at the show I was at, so I bought an octagon barrel and I just filed that thing.
Wow.
filed it half around and tapered it, and it took quite a while. But I did all that in an apartment I was living in, and I had about a 4-foot wide bench that I had nailed together out of 2x4s, and just kind of worked in the bedroom of my apartment, which was kind of a mess actually, but it worked out okay. So you can get started doing stuff like this without a lot of gear. I mean, there's always room for more good gear and tools, but you can start without a whole lot. So anyway, that was a very interesting experience for me. And as I was building this over a year or so, I mean, it took me a while to figure that stuff out. So I read an article in Muzzle Blast by Eric By, and this was back in 1972, I think. Okay. And but he's now the current editor. And he wrote this neat little article about how you could hand forge a trigger, and forge it by taking say 80 thousandths wide or a little bigger than a 16th piece of sheet steel, anneal it, and then hammer on the edge of it to flare out the shoe of the trigger. And that just fascinated me. I couldn't believe that was physically possible to do. Okay. So I had to try it. Yeah. But a few things like that can really catch your attention. If you just go ahead and try them, you find out it works pretty well.
Opens up a new world.
It does. You get a whole different view of materials like metal and wood and what you can do with them, and how in the 18th century and 19th century they accomplished a lot of this.
Sure. So. Oh, that's wild. When did you hook up with Bivens? That's somewhere along in the...
Yeah. Well, I had run into his articles back in the early 70s, and they were published in Rifle magazine first, and later he did some for other magazines and Muzzle Blast. Yeah. But I thought he was the finest writer I had ever seen. I liked his ideas and the way he approached things. I was fascinated by, his how to do it articles on these things. I mean, saying it's a how to do it article is kind of slighting it in a way, and I don't mean to do that because just fascinating all the way around. And I came down to Friendship probably, I think, the first time in 1976.
Okay.
And I just had a little pup tent to stay in, and didn't have a clue what to do down here or who to talk to or anything. And I just picked out a camping spot and paid my fee and everything and plunked myself down. And a little while later, some guys came up, put a tent next to me and everything, and they started asking me, saying hello and everything. And they said, "Oh, you're a gun maker." I said, "Oh, yeah, this is my first rifle I ever built." And they said, "Oh, that's pretty nice." I said, "Do you know John Bivens?" And I said, "Boy, I've read his articles. It's terrific." And he said, "Well, he's a friend of ours. He's coming over for dinner after dinner tonight, and
cool.
we're going to talk." And I said, I was just shocked,
Yeah.
And so they said, "Come on over a little bit after dinner, and we'll sit around and talk. We'll introduce you to him." I said, "Oh man, this is great," but I was really nervous.
Sure. Sure.
But so he and I think Monty Mandarino was his journeyman at that time. And they came over and had a nice fire to sit around and talk, and he was pretty nice guy and pretty interesting. And Monty was a riot.
Oh yeah.
Just he has a terrific sense of humor, and he and John were just a lot of fun to talk to, and we had a great time. And I was just thrilled, just thrilled. And so that's how I met him. But now the next time I came back, probably, I don't know, a few months later for the next shoot, I found out that he needed a journeyman.
Okay.
And Jerry Kirkland actually let me know that and said, you ought to talk to him and see if you can get to work with him. And I thought, man, there's no chance of that. So he said, no, go talk to him. So eventually I did, and made an appointment to go down and see him in Winston-Salem and interview with him.
Yeah.
And that was rather shocking.
Oh, I bet.
Sitting there in John's shop, which was very impressive, beautiful, and John did everything really nice, so it was a really nice shop. And just sitting there kind of behind him. When I was there, he was carving a Jaeger, one of his beautiful Jaeger rifles, and I just sat kind of behind him a little bit and watched as he just in a few minutes sketched out this fantastic carving, just stuff that I had never even seen or imagined before, and I was just absolutely intimidated.
Oh, I imagine.
And then watched him proceed to start the carving and everything, but it was just wonderful. And as soon as I was done talking to him that day, I went back to the motel and wrote up notes on absolutely everything I had seen. But anyway, eventually I ended up getting the job and went down and worked for him. And my wife and I moved down there and spent actually about a year and 9 months down there.
Okay.
And during that time, the first 6 months were just a real trial. I mean, it was just a real struggle to try to work up to John's standards and learn all the things he needed to teach me. But after 6 months, things calmed down a little bit, and but it just, that kind of experience makes a tremendous difference in your ability to do things, and even how you look at things, and how you see the type of work on an old piece, and what you want to do on a new piece.
Okay.
So it was an enormous opportunity.
I bet. One question I've been asking everybody that I've talked to that was a rifle maker is, what particular school, style, period turns your crank? What do you like to do right now?
Boy, that's really a tough question. I have really broad-ranging interests in styles and types of pieces, and it varies a lot.
Okay.
And one of the things I like best about being a gun maker is that I can work in different styles, and I can focus my attention for a bit of time in a certain style and build a piece in that, immerse myself essentially in that, and do that. Now I favor it. I've been doing a lot of work recently with the Moravian style pieces that come out of that, what many people think of today as the Bethlehem Christian Springs area, and but I'm also doing a lot of work with Southern type pieces. Right now I'm working on it's going to be a highly decorated Southern rifle from probably the 1760s, 1770 period, and that right now that's sitting back home in the shop on the bench, and it's all together, but I still have to do the patch box and then all the decorations.
Sure. Sure. I think I know the answer that you're going to give to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. If somebody came to you and said, would you make me a copy of the Rifle and Shumway's page X? Tell me your reaction to that kind of a question.
Well, I would probably want to talk to the individual for a while and see what he liked about this rifle and why he liked this piece and so forth. Get a feel for kind of what he's seeing and what he wants to do with the piece. I mean, because function and use is very important as well as style. Yeah. But in the long run, I would probably want to tell him that I wouldn't want to make an absolute copy, probably. Yeah. I have done that in the past, a couple of times. I did a pretty close copy of an Isaac Haynes piece, and that was actually the first piece that I explored scraping the stock rather than sanding, and that was a real kind of turning point in my bench work and understanding of contemporary work. So that was a great thing to do, but it's I would probably want to create something. If someone wanted something in that style, I would probably hope they would be interested in my creating a piece within the context of that particular style, but with my own, like if I would build it as if I were living during that period in that place and try to create my own piece, which I think is a great challenge. Yeah. And I think for the client, it's a way to get a much more interesting piece, more individual piece, and that's what I prefer to do.
That's the kind of answer I've been getting. Yeah. That copying something exactly wasn't what they really wanted to do, but to make something in that style or their interpretation of that style.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common attitude among many of us today. And, you know, during the period, any particular gun maker wouldn't have done a copy of somebody else's work. If someone came in to Isaac Haynes and said, "Oh, I want you to do a gun just like Jacob Dickert does down the road,"
that would have been a no-no.
That probably wouldn't work very well. Yeah. And, you know, you might as well do something individual. And each one of these pieces is handmade. It's an individual piece, and you might as well keep it that way and keep. It doesn't have to be totally totally inappropriate for whatever style it is, but you can do some fascinating things. And if a client likes some individual gunmaker's work and likes what he's done in the past, I think he should feel confident that he's going to do good work for him and create something he's going to like. Yeah. You know, you need a fair amount of interchange between the client and the gunmaker, and I like to do a lot of talking about style and what someone likes and what the possibilities are, and lay out a bunch of possibilities and parameters on a particular piece, and then come up with something kind of in consultation with someone.
I remember thinking that if I fell into some money that I was going to come to you and say, I had a great-great-great-grandfather that was in the Lancaster County Militia, Civil War period. Make me something that would have been, you know, typical of what he might have had, since I have no way of knowing, and the gun, if he had one, never survived. That trip your trigger any? Or?
I think that's a very interesting way to approach